They say opposites attract.
Well, I never thought I'd say these words, but over time I've grown quite fond of Jerry Brownlee.
And stepping inside Parliament, that's clearly true.
I mean, I think most Kiwis would relate to playing a bit of footy and you're doing your absolute best to destroy the other team, but you can have a beer afterwards.
It's a peculiar place where you can bump into David Seymour munching on a packet of chips in between meetings or make small talk with Damien O'Connor while waiting in line for a coffee. And it's a place where, despite its formal reputation, politicians seem almost normal.
I think you only put the bits often on TV or in the media that are really exciting and really controversial.
We actually have personal relationships across the divide.
Yesterday I spent 8 or 9 hours sitting in the select committee working really constructively to try and improve legislation so it will deliver for Kiwi communities, for sports clubs, for different organisations. And that's not glamorous, that doesn't make the media.
But today it does. Kia ora, I'm Davina Zimmer, and today on The Detail, I'm at the Beehive, where I'm spending a week with the Press Gallery as a Sir Ian Templeton Scholar. I want to find out if things are as divided as they seem from the outside, and behind all the performance, the debate and the drama, what politicians are really like.
Look, with very few exceptions, most people get on with one another. I mean, we all, commit to a profession, a calling really, it's you give up a lot of time, go away from family, it's not all bad, but it's a shared journey, I guess, even though we disagree sometimes quite strongly on the way forward, but actually understanding that we're all humans here and we're all trying to do our best.
Labour MP Damien O'Connor began his political career in the early 90s, representing the West Coast Tasman district. About 3 decades later, we're sitting in his office in the Labour wing of Parliament, talking about what it's like working here. And it turns out it's not all fiery debates and inflammatory statements. Damien says in places like select committees, it's actually possible to find some common ground.
People who watch them will realise that, there's a lot of agreement and people genuinely trying to make better legislation and make improvements that will be enduring. If one party pushes too far in government, then the chances are that the next government's going to reverse it. So that, seems like a waste of time for most MPs, regardless of which side you're on. So traditionally in New Zealand, through politics and through Parliament, we've tried to, maintain a steady course down the middle, you might say. MPs brought more diversity. That's positive for a whole lot of reasons, but it also means that you get more views from either end of the spectrum. So that's more challenging. We see, and we have seen in Parliament more recently, of course, actions that some consider outrageous. They just simply, in my view, whether it's a haka or, interventions that people think are beyond the standing orders, it's a reflection, I guess, of the diverse range of views across New Zealand, a nation that is a bit more frustrated for a whole lot of reasons. Cost of living, COVID, all of that stuff has meant that people and politicians are slightly more frustrated, and that will show out from time to time.
Would you say that what plays out in Parliament and in the chamber is a reflection of what New Zealand as a society is like?
I think that's generally true, yes. I mean, for the most part, we are nice people, we're reasonable people, we've had access to, I guess a society that's quite fair, provides opportunities, but on the fringes, and for many people, of course, that's not the reality, and that has to be brought to Parliament. We can't pretend that everything's all okay, and then we can just slightly change course between one Parliament and another. There will be some dramatic changes as is needed. And while from time to time there'll be the government members say, look, we'd like some bipartisan, kind of agreement on these things, that's fine. But if we disagree with basically the direction of travel, we're not going to agree. We're going to say, no, we'll change that when we get in. Now, I know that seems frustrating for a lot of people out there. We swing from one side to the other, but, we can't head down what we consider as the wrong path, and I guess that's the core of politics. I guess what we see is influences from outside New Zealand that are brought into politics sometimes, into commerce, that don't hold the values that we aspire to maintain in our country. So when we see those outside influences, and they're creeping into politics here, then we've got to stamp them out, in my view. They're not appropriate for our country. If people want to run them elsewhere, that's fine, but we shouldn't be told what to do or what not to do by countries from outside our country. Of course we have to work with them in an international society, but we've been quite proud of our independent foreign policy, our commitment to social justice and human rights and all of those things, and running a fair and open and transparent democracy. We've got to make sure that we maintain that.
One of the ways that's maintained is through question time, where opposition has a chance to hold the government to account over its decisions.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I understand that in fact rent increases are the lowest they've been in some years. In fact, according to a measure I read yesterday, rents have actually declined, which I would have thought the member for Auckland Central who used to claim she stood for renters would be welcoming and even celebrating.
And as politicians make their way across the black and white tiles to and from the chamber, it's free game for the press. And I used the opportunity to ask a couple of MPs about cross-party relationships and if things are really as divided as they seem. Who's your favourite party member from the other side?
There's lots of nice people. They just have really bad ideas for running the country.
But if you had to name one?
Lan Farm, always calm. I like her. I like the way she does things. Steve Abel's great fun playing cricket with, and Penny Henare on Foreign Affairs Committee. I think he genuinely cares about trying to do things really well.
You're human beings. It's really difficult to have that level of animosity when you're working closely with someone, and often it's not your job. So often in select committees we might have a bill that we might be opposing, but it's within the interests of the people that we support and we represent to, even if we oppose the substance of the bill, to make that bill as good as it possibly can be, in the knowledge that if that's law, we want it to be the best version that it possibly can be. And so that does require cooperation, and it does require working with other people that you might not necessarily have a lot in common with.
Well, look, I have a great time with my cabinet colleagues. I think I get on well with most of them. But of course, I'm here to do the job that the people elected me to do, not make friendships. So I, work in a collegial manner with everybody to help progress the government's agenda.
Whether it's a select committee or a particular piece of legislation, we can work extremely collaboratively. The debating chamber, that's all about performance, but we actually get down and do the work, particularly in select committee, it's the engine room of Parliament, and often we work really collaboratively.
Who's someone from the opposition who you particularly admire?
Well, look, you'll only make enemies by giving an answer to that statement. If I trust somebody over there, they'll better trust me if I keep a confidence. Won't they?
Fair enough. How have the cross-party relationships changed over the years that you've been in the Beehive?
Well, some people that understand when you shake your hand, you keep your word, and there's some people that simply don't. And behind your back, they backstab you and do everything else. It's the first type that I admire.
Who's backstab?
I've actually had a source tell me that you're considered one of the most popular MPs, and I just wanted to ask what you think of that.
I'm not sure who your source is. I'm not sure what the basis of that is.
Steve Abel is a Green MP.
It's important to value collegiality across the House, even where you can disagree politically.
From the outside, it seems quite politically divided. I mean, it's always going to be, you're always going to have the left and the right, but is it actually really that polarised when the cameras aren't rolling?
Yeah, we have some very interesting conversations on the Primary Production Select Committee where I think if we were tasked with sitting down and coming to consensus on a given issue, we could actually do that. But unfortunately, the adversarial structure of the Westminster system is that we don't get given the job of finding, consensus on big issues. And that's a pity, because I do think that there is often a lot of common ground.
Most New Zealanders are pretty reasonable. As I say, we'll have our views and our opinions, but, we've thankfully, because of our ancestors, we've been brought up in a reasonably civilised society. We have robust debate. Some people may be in a more polite one, but I guess workplaces were traditionally a place for robust discussion, but people then, after smoko, they just get on and work with one another. And, that's a wonderful way to run a society. There is a bar that has been opened up. Not a lot of people go to it but most of us are really too busy. But actually where you see, journalists and politicians from all parties kind of mixing and mingling in a social environment, actually that's a positive thing, for New Zealand.
I mean, workplace relationships are important in any kind of office environment, right? I mean, I'm thinking at RNZ, it's always great to go up into the staff room, make a coffee, have a chat with someone from a different department. Do you have that similar kind of vibe here at the Beehive?
I mean, we operate in offices that are sectioned off into the parties, and so there's not much interaction between the parties, in a day-to-day kind of operational sense. So that's where in the house, coming to and from the house, you bump into one another. There's sometimes a choreo lounge, sometimes there are organised meetings, but more often it's informal. And so the opportunities for more of that would be positive. I've had the good fortune, I guess, to be part of a parliamentary rugby team for quite a long time, and that was a wonderful way to socially engage with people from the other parties. It started out in 1994, and so it was basically National and Labour. We came together and we had an offshore trip to South Africa, actually met Nelson Mandela. It was quite inspiring for a whole lot of reasons, but it also taught me the value of working with people, understanding people from other parties, and I think it's helped me. As more parties have come into Parliament, they too have participated in the parliamentary rugby team. We now have more sports teams. I think that's a wonderful institution that it not just helps you try and keep fit or pretend you can play rugby or sport still when maybe you shouldn't be, but it actually helps with Parliament and therefore helps New Zealand.
It's through the parliamentary cricket team that Labour's Kieran McAnulty found common ground with some members of the National and NZ First parties.
I get on really well with James Meagher. I get on very well with Mark Patterson, although I don't think he likes me to say that publicly. It probably doesn't suit him politically at the moment. And Chris Bishop as well. All three of them I played with the cricket team. And what I like about the parliamentary cricket team is that politics stays on the boundary, and you just, like any other cricket team, you get on and then you play hard and you have a beer afterwards and you enjoy each other's company.
National MP Simeon Brown is a little less enthusiastic about cross-party relationships.
I'm not sure if I'd consider him sort of a friend. I think from my time in opposition, you sort of spend, I think, a lot more time with MPs on both sides because you're around select committee tables. So I think you get a lot more contact. One MP that I have a bit of contact with would be Tangi Utakere.
And while some MPs were hesitant to talk about current colleagues, a few had nice things to say about previous ones. Here's former Speaker of the House and current Labour MP, Adrian Rurafe.
And I'll tell you someone who was really good, and especially in my time, was Tracy Martin. I remember we had an inquiry into special needs education. Yeah, she just had this knack of getting the other two key parties in the room to actually talk to each other.
And here's Greens co-leader Marama Davidson talking about Chester Burrows.
I'm really happy to talk about Chester Burrows, who has passed on and was on my Māori Affairs Select Committee, who's a much-loved national MP and held that seat for the Taranaki area that he comes from. He would, buy me lunch and stuff like that when we were travelling for Māori Affairs Select Committee to different places. So little things like that. But when I was detained by Israel, when I was on the flotilla to Gaza, he personally sent requests to the relevant embassies to make sure that I was safe and to make sure that I was going to be returned home safely. So it's like that sort of stuff is never spoken about, but we actually have personal relationships across the divide all the time. It's very normal.
With a caveat.
The system is set up in a way that you have to fight for power, and it means trampling over everyone else to get it. What we know, the bigger issues that require some enduring solutions, inequities, climate change and environmental devastation, and, just upholding democracy, they actually need us to work together. And this place continues to ask us to fight each other all the time, every single day. It should be the mandate from the people who are driving politicians. Far too often it's the other way around. The people should be demanding, hey, sort something out about poverty, sort something out about climate action, because we are the ones who have to bear the harm of your decisions.
But Labour Party leader and leader of the opposition, Chris Hipkins, says most legislative changes go through with support of the whole House.
There's a lot more cross-party collaboration around Parliament than I think the public would realise. There is a lot of cooperation around that. I always took the view when I was on select committees as an opposition backbencher that it was better to make a bad government bill better, even if you were still going to vote against it, than to obstruct the process. And I think most members of Parliament through the select committee process take that attitude.
What about the personal and professional relationships? You know, in most workplaces, you're friends with your colleagues. So do you have anyone who you'd happily go for a beer with after work?
What you find around Parliament is that a lot of relationships are quite situational. So there were national MPs that I got on really well with in select committees, but then of course they leave. You know, Todd Muller was great fun to be on a select committee with. I got on very well with him, as was Nikki Kay. So you tend to find that your relationships are depending on the circumstances you're in. So if you look for it, you can find people on the other side that you can get on with and that you can, you know, have a break with during select committees. So I go and sit down and have a chat to and be quite friendly.
Well, there are lots of politicians who love to say, oh, we're all really great friends. And I just think, like, if you go to Parliament to try and make friends, you've got two problems. Why don't you already have friends? And second of all, when do you do your work?
Deputy Prime Minister and leader of ACT, David Seymour, is less likely to mix work with pleasure.
I've never been of that view, but I think it's fair to say that some of the stuff that people see on the news is performative. And it's also true that most people, most of the time, are there to try and make the country a better place. May have very different views on how to do that, but nonetheless, you know, most people, most of the time, are not actually evil. If you have a common cause to work on, you can generally do that. What I found with end-of-life choices, we had a whole lot of people around the table from different parties, and we worked together to make sure we got the votes for legalising euthanasia from different parties, and often there were people who maybe wouldn't talk to me because they didn't like me for whatever reason. It's a shame, but we could use other people to talk to them, on behalf of the bill.
Do you find, just jumping off what you said, how people chose not to speak to you, do you find sometimes personal views get in the way of professional negotiations?
Because people will decide that actually we're not here to hold the ideas at arm's length, toss them around, discard the ones we don't like and make progress. There are people who say your ideas are your identity. I think it sounds to me like that's especially prevalent around Gen Z, and it seems to be growing. Whereas what I was always astonished with some of the real old timers that I were around in Parliament when I first got here, is they could be complete assholes 1 second, and then, be perfectly civil the next. And it really was just completely performative. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a better way to be. But the ability to work issue by issue and not be, grudging towards people, I think is an asset.
Do you have anyone from the opposition that you'd happily go for a beer with after work?
Look, the weird thing is I probably wouldn't, because at the moment I don't get time to have a beer with my actual friends that I grew up with and went to school with and still would like to see a lot more of. In fact, actually, my partner would probably be annoyed if she found I was using discretionary social time for other purposes. So, look, it sounds weird. I don't have any problem in principle. I just actually, would try and use the social time I have for my actual social life.
I mean, it seems so foreign to me, maybe because it's not my day-to-day, but sitting in question time yesterday, watching people throw jabs at each other across the house, but then you see other times those very same people having a laugh together or catching up outside of work. It's a very unique environment, isn't it?
It is, and that's why I guess I've been here a while. It's addictive. I mean, if you want to make a difference and you like variety and uncertainty, then this is a good place to be. You never know what happens from one day to the next, in spite of your best efforts to plan it. But I mean, the media, and look, this is not unusual. People know that conflict and differences are better to highlight, get better headlines, and so those are the things that often get publicised around Parliament. So the unity, the coordination, the harmony doesn't get so much publicity, of course, out in the wider community. Look, we have to represent the many and varied views of New Zealanders across the country, and so they are different. They're brought to the House. They have to be brought to the House in a respectful way because we have to resolve them. Politics is the art of the possible. While people might want this and that, in the end we have to agree to live together in a way that builds a better New Zealand. These are hard decisions, but you've got to compromise ultimately, and you've got to be able to learn to live with one another.
That's all for today from The Detail, a newsroom production that's supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. This episode was produced by Gwen McClure and engineered by William Saunders. Thank you to all the MPs who made time to speak with me for this episode, and thank you to the Press Gallery team for hosting me in Parliament for the week, courtesy of the Sir Ian Templeton Scholarship. I'm Davina Zimmer, ka kite.